To better. Good afternoon. So there's 3 of us and not 4, as you see. We lost Scott, unfortunately. So doesn't mean we don't have enough to talk about. A lot of interesting things we just chatted about.
I just wanted to say that I'm very grateful to Scott because I thought I would be the person voted most likely to miss the panel. So
thanks, Scott, wherever you are. We don't actually know what happened. My name is Catherine Bischoff. I'm the Chief Relationship Officer at Factory Berlin. We're a big community of 3,000 members, mostly based in Berlin, but across the globe, of creatives, technologists that come together because they're curious, because they're ambitious, because they're creators and founders, and they want to make things happen. So we create a platform and an incredible network for them to do that. I'm going to plug it because we also have a booth up here with some of our startups and community members that are here, so feel free to come out and meet some of us. I'm going to start with you, Tuhin. So you lead UMG's efforts to support early-stage digital music companies. You designed and launched the Accelerator Engagement Network, so we're going to talk about that. And you're building partnerships with accelerators around the globe. And you've been involved with the development of a lot of different innovation licenses. So we'll give you 10 minutes. Thiago? Strategic partnerships at Warner Music, looking to emerging technologies, innovation startups in the music, entertainment, and media space. Also going to talk about some of those partnerships, how you work with the innovation space and investing into new business models. I'm going to preface all of this with an anecdote that I already told these 2 guys about that happened to me 10 days ago. I was on vacation in Sweden and in a digital detox vacation and drove from Stockholm to northern Sweden, just 500 kilometers from the polar circle. I've never been that far north. I've never experienced so much light for that long a period of time during a day. And my 10-year-old daughter was in the back of the car with some of her friends, and we were driving away, and they're all still on their phones and like on YouTube and Instagram, and those that have TikTok were on TikTok. And the closer we got up north, became obviously very, very remote. 70% of Sweden is made of forests. We got off major roads. By the time we got to our cabin, we had no connectivity anymore. First freak out, the kids. They had been prepared, but they were still freaked out. This cabin didn't have any electricity or running water. We didn't tell them that either before, just because we wanted to make sure they were going to get on the plane with us to begin with. So, okay, we're off the web. The next 24 hours, we still have our phones. You know, everyone's listening to their Spotify playlists. Everyone's happy. About 18 hours later, batteries are all dead. No one can recharge their phones. And a second meltdown happens. We're still okay. There's still food and chips. And I discover in this cabin a stack of CDs and a ghetto blaster with these big batteries beside it. And I was like, look, kids, artifacts. And showed them the CDs, and they literally had no idea what these were. They've seen vinyl before. They've touched vinyl. They had no idea what a CD was. And I just thought, wow, this is incredible. You know, how something that was so seminal for my generation of like saving up money, going to the store, buying a CD, or then eventually buying it online, feeling it, seeing it, paying for it. And then here we have these kids that don't understand what it is because they don't even pay for their own content. I mean, maybe they pay for it, I pay for it. And if, they're probably not paying for anything that they consume. So just putting that into perspective as we start this conversation.
But what's the end of the story? How did they do without technology?
So the next day they fished. They learned how to fish. Yeah. They were catching like 1 to 2 fish a day. We hiked did a lot of hiking. We learned how to make a fire with one match. Although I'm from Canada, I knew how to do that beforehand. Yeah, it was pretty grounding. I think we all agreed that we slept better than any of us have slept in the last 10 to 15 years, despite that it was very bright at 4 in the morning. So it was good. We did things like puzzling and stuff. Yeah, so cheers to being off the grid. I recommend it to everyone.
Very brave.
Just a question. What was the CD that was considered the official soundtrack of that?
Oh, well, we were in Sweden, so there was always the best of ABBA. But
Love that.
ironically, the batteries were all dead. And the next supermarket was like a 2-hour drive, so we just decided to deal with no music for a week, which I thought was really unfortunate. But at the end of the day, it was just within the price to pay for a very, very relaxing vacation. Anyway, so those are tales from my summer. Tuhin.
Cool. All right, well, I'm actually doing a presentation after this where I'm going to talk in great depth about all the things that UMG is doing. I have a digital innovation title, and I work in the headquarters in Santa Monica, but we've got a very, very large number of people in the company who are interested in digital innovation. 30 of them have been at Sónar, because we did a meeting on Wednesday, an internal meeting. So, and that was by far not all the people in the company are interested in it. So it's a topic that is, deeply at the core of the business today. Our business is, anyone who's casually observing the music business knows, turned around 3 years ago after 15 years of challenges and decline. And today the business is, kind of mid 60%, approaching 70% digital. Obviously, that's going to continue to increase. So everyone understands that it's, that it's a very core part of what we do. The reason I'm at UMG is that I went to my now boss, Michael Nash, about 3.5 years ago when he joined Universal, shortly after he joined Universal, and said, I'd been an entrepreneur in the space, been a founder, co-founder, advisor in probably 10 companies, and 6 or 7 of which have been acquired and survived. And I had worked on a lot of different projects as an advisor over the last 3 or 4 years before that. And I went to Michael, I said, listen, I think the music industry has got a problem, which is that there are not enough entrepreneurs and investors and business thinkers who are focused on our space anymore. When I started, the first company, actually my first company I worked with was a digital music company, was as a lawyer working in a Silicon Valley corporate finance practice in 1999, around that time. And then I got involved in starting a company in San Francisco. And at that time, San Francisco was just in this amazing renaissance, with the dot-com boom. And just like any entrepreneur who had any sense that any business might migrate to the internet, there were just a ton of people pursuing everything. And music being music, there were, probably 30 financed music companies in San Francisco at that time. So it was just very robust. There was a tremendous amount of good entrepreneurial talent focused on the space. People were trying different models, and if you sort of fast forward over the 15 years of difficulty that started around that time when Napster launched in 1999, you saw a progressive kind of withdrawal of entrepreneurial interest from the space and investor interest from the space, and there were a lot of reasons for that. It was, a sort of, I think, legitimate response to a lot of money being invested, only a few companies surviving, for it sometimes being difficult to work with content owners and to get licenses that were required. Lots of good reasons. But 3 years ago, with the business turning around, I kind of came in and said, look, at this point, this is the future of the business. If you look at our strategy decks, it's all about diversifying our partner base and sort of just growing the business generally, the consumer side of the business. And it's not going to happen if we don't have talent in this space. So I at that point was kind of pitching him on doing something on an industry-wide basis, and he said, this is very important to us. Why don't you come here and do that here? So so we've had this real commitment from the top to start looking at what we can do as a company to support entrepreneurs in a very meaningful way. And again, if you stay for the next piece, I'll talk about that in a lot of detail. But I think it represents a real shift. And as Thiago and I were talking about, while major labels compete very vociferously to sign artists, there's actually a lot of collaboration going on, I think. Maybe not explicit collaboration, but collaborative contributions to the same goal of supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so, I'll let Thiago talk about what they're doing, but our colleagues at Sony Music are doing interesting things, and we're doing everything from very early stage ideation-based stuff, which is really the core of rebuilding entrepreneurial thinking around our space. So things like hackathons and design challenges and the innovation challenge that we're doing here, to a whole myriad of acceleration options all over the world, to easier licensing for companies that need licensing, and importantly, a lot of work with the investor community to re-engage investors and look at it, many of whom had just tuned out and didn't know anything about it. One of my best friends is a VC in San Francisco, and I went to lunch with him like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and he was like, wow, you joined the music business? Why, doesn't that suck to be in the music business? I was like, no, it's like growing and profitable. He didn't know, and he was a guy who had actually sold a music company. So a lot of it is just kind of reintroducing people who have tuned out to the opportunities today. And we have views on what the opportunities are, but a lot of what we do is encourage people to dream and think outside the box, or inside the box if they want to, and then support them with our understanding of the ecosystem. And of course, we always have a point of view as well, but we attempt to be a partner with entrepreneurs in just giving them advice, giving them the understanding of how we might interact with their company going forward, what we think problems might be, and it's been quite successful so far. So.
Before you go on, can I get a show of hands from the crowd who works in kind of the startup space, who's a founder, who's a technologist for a startup? Okay, a few of you. Because I'm curious to hear, I mean, that's the space that Factory Berlin is in, obviously, and we have corporates that are with us that want to tap into the many talented entrepreneurs and startups in our community, and there's a lot of translation that needs to happen, and to make that happen. Processes are very challenging sometimes, so maybe we can park that for later. Thiago?
Hey. So I work for the innovation team at Warner Music. I'm based in London, and I oversee Europe and Israel for the innovation function. My background is actually not in music at all. I come from the world of consulting, traditional strategy consultant, then innovation consultant, always connected with the media, entertainment, and technology worlds, which is kind of how I started to progress into the world of music. There were a few projects that I did for a few clients in the space of music back when streaming was becoming a thing, and that kind of whet my appetite for a passion that I already had for a long time. You spoke about ABBA. I grew up on ABBA. I grew up on Queen. I mean, those are the two bands and artists that I completely grew up with my parents telling me, because my father's called Fernando, which is an ABBA song, and my mom's named Delilah, which is a Queen song. So obviously, I grew up with music. It is part of my DNA, and it was just a natural step for me to go into the world of music.
And before you continue, I'd like to tell another anecdote about Thiago that I learned from a common friend. He speaks very eloquent English, as we can tell, and he actually learned his English by watching cartoons. So if any of you are looking to improve your English, go to cartoons. So I was curious if he would speak like Scooby-Doo, and I thought if all else fails, we could just do a whole session in Scooby-Doo talk, but no, it's not Scooby-Doo.
Not Scooby-Doo. And it's specifically Cartoon Network, not any kind of cartoons. The golden years of Cartoon Network. Good. The Hanna-Barbera Vaults, but also Dexter's Laboratory, Cow and Chicken, Powerpuff Girls, all of those. All of those.
Excellent.
So I grew up with music, and I am very connected to the world of music. I am a musician, if I can call myself that, as well. And back in the day when I was in college, I organized a few parties, or DJ'd, or was organizing and creating a festival. So I kind of was dipping my toes in and out in one way, shape, or form. And then a year and a half ago, that became more of an effective commitment to the world of music when I joined Warner Music. And I think I joined in a very interesting time, because as Tuhin was saying, there's a lot of innovation happening right now in the world of music from the startup space, but also from corporates such as ourselves. Historically, the music industry has not been the best at doing innovation, and we lost a lot because of it. So I think there is now a perception that we need to step up and do a better job than we've done before. So how's that going to be done? So we're thinking about how that's going to be done, and we're doing several approaches to see what works, similar to what a startup would do, right? I think one of the things that we're doing is putting our money where our mouth is and doing investments to startups with our own Boost Fund, which we created last year, and it has generated an immense amount of relationships, connections, knowledge, access, because the objective of the fund is to exactly support these new distribution models and new models of consumption that we are seeing being created. And rather than sticking to the same models over and over and perhaps make the same mistakes again and dug our trenches, we rather explore and support companies and entrepreneurs and inventors out there which are doing different things to see how consumers react to that. In the company as well, we also try and build innovation from within. So we have a division called the Fire Pit, which is what we can call our internal creative tech agency. And that's where new apps, new features, new games, new exercises of technology are done. The first time that I got in there, there was a drone flying there. Why? I don't know, but there was a drone flying in there. And so these are the type of experiential exercises of technology exploration that we're trying to do to get our organization more set up with technology and to have a more intrinsic innovation mindset in it.
Very cool. Let's start from the basics. You're not a well-known artist out there, and how are you going to get off the ground, and what kind of model is relevant to that type of creator at that early stage, trying to get some exposure, trying to generate any pennies for that matter? What are you?
Want me to start with that? So I think it's a great time to be an independent artist, actually. In the old business that was around the shiny disc that you found at the North Pole, there really was a gatekeeping function. I think, certainly larger, more successful labels were a gatekeeping function. Radio was a gatekeeping function, and over kind of the last 15 years in terrestrial radio, you had a lot of consolidation in the United States particularly, but also in Europe and elsewhere. So playlists were being sort of centrally programmed, and I think in that time, and I have been involved in the creative side of the industry for a long time as well, it was very, very difficult. Like, I think as an artist, you really spent a lot of time focusing on getting signed to a label, because that was your first gate that you had to pass through. The way the industry has changed, there's still gatekeepers. There has been, to a certain extent, a consolidation of promotion and distribution into the major digital music services, particularly around kind of playlisting, taking some of the function of radio as an exposure channel. I will point out, though, that radio is still very, very important. And actually, I think I just read something that total listening hours of terrestrial radio in the United States went up in the last measuring period. Oh. But you do have this new kind of promotional channel. So there are new gatekeepers, but I think there's way more gates to go through. And I think the gates are smaller, and there are, so if you're looking to a playlisting strategy, for example, to get exposure for yourself, there's not like one person you have to go to at Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon to get on playlists. There's like lots of people who have really successful playlists that you can talk to. I think that social media, in the same way that it's had some damaging effects in sifting people into micro niches around their views, the other side of that coin, that's the dark side of the coin. The light side of that coin is that people with niche interests in music are able to connect around that niche And it could be a particular Instagram account that just really likes Turkish deep house music. That Instagram account is going to find its 250,000 or 1 million, no number would surprise me anymore, fans. There are more strategies for building independent careers. You can build through the old method of getting a van and circling your country or your continent and playing the smallest clubs the first time around, and then the next time a little bit bigger club. That still exists, but you can also, if you're a growth hacker, you can figure out how to, buy clicks to your Spotify track, the track you just put on Spotify cheaply, and test whether it's a real thing. There's a lot of tools you can buy. The tool sets, I think, are incredible. There are so many entry points for independent artists that want to distribute their music, from very low-cost independent distributors to larger kind of, in some cases, subsidiaries of our companies that will do it, that provide different amounts of marketing support and professional support for artists at different careers, and you can actually progress through those. You can release a track through SpinUp, which is our R&D distribution subsidiary, and work your way up through those ranks. So I think it's actually a great time, and the way we feel it is that artists have a much better ability to demonstrate their viability before they get seen by larger labels, which puts a lot more power in their hands, frankly, because just like if you have a startup and you're walking into a VC's office, like, you literally cannot have that meeting until you put a product out and you've got some stats and you understand your emerging engagement metrics and growth metrics and virality and so on and so forth. Same thing with artists now, but they're able to have that conversation. So I think it's a really great time to be an indie.
You want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to echo the fact that it's now probably the most interesting and exciting time to be an up-and-coming artist, an independent artist. If I had to choose, I'd be an artist right now. And when I was doing my music, I never had the dream, personally, of being signed to a record label. And I've never thought that that was a path that artists could or should take. It was just an afterthought. I just didn't believe my music was good enough for a record label to even see me. But now to think that there is that path, which is not only established, but also there are artist role models that have traversed that path and have supported others doing that same thing. It's quite inspiring to see artists that are now saying, why should we go through the traditional model? Why can't we hack that model and find something different? And I think the point about the tools is incredible. There is a plethora of tools out there that is, frankly, overwhelming, but it's in a good way, right? You have so many choices as a consumer, artist as a consumer, for you to do your career and develop your music in whatever way that you want, from the creation side to the promotion to the distribution, to even pitching yourself to new platforms of technologies of consumption. So it's really exciting right now to have this overwhelming group of tools that hopefully will become even better as time passes, that allow you to service your career. And it does have an impact on the mindset of A&Rs in our companies, because they now have an expectancy that these tools will have been used, and that you as an artist have developed your career at least a little bit through that path, because it shows that you're hungry for your career to succeed. And we all love ambition in anyone, including our artists as well as the startups, right? So I think it's very, very exciting, and we're going to see a lot of interesting new pieces of music, new genres of music, as you were talking about Turkish jazz, who now are able to get the exposure to their fans, as you were talking about, rather than being dependent on an executive and a record label to understand that there will be a commercial benefit to bet on them. And that's going to just be awesome as a fan of music, because I will be able to find Turkish jazz more easily. And maybe I'll be falling in love with Turkish jazz. I probably would.
But
It was
also,
actually Turkish house music. That
Oh,
Turkish
Turkish house music?
Yeah.
Well, I kind of heard jazz.
but so that artist then is obviously in the public and has to create a persona at a much earlier stage. I mean, the people that manage to make careers by signing on to a record label, well, their careers and their appearance and persona was much defined by those record labels. And now there's the onus on the individual, not only to create content and get that out onto different channels, but also to be actively engaged in all different types of social media channels and platforms and continuously evolve so that they can create a relationship to their fan base. So that kind of dichotomy of like there's being in having a direct experience with your fan is much different today than it ever was before. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think artists, again, are savvier than ever, are more versed on the technologies than ever, and so they will prefer, as I think they've always wanted to, but they will prefer to have a direct access and direct connection to their fans. If back in the day it was meeting them at the merch stand after a live concert, now, and then maybe there were the newsletters and fan clubs, now there's a multitude of ways for you to have that connection. And I think that's something that anyone in this space should be definitely interested in trying to explore. We're certainly interested in how we can generate an access point for our artists to have that connection directly to their fans, and for the fans to engage with the artists. Can this be somewhat of a collaborative relationship? This is the question that I would love to have you guys answer, because I want as much as possible for the fans to say, I really like what you did with that music. Can I have more of it? In the same way that I want the artists to tell to their fans, this is what I'm doing, what do you think of it? So can we create this not just purely commercial relationship between the fan and the artist, but also a collaborative creative one, one of brand positioning, one of the fans helping build the artist's career as well. One of the tools out there that we invested heavily on is Songkick, because that was a tool for fans to be able to say, this is a place where I can express my fandom on an artist by saying I like it. And so next time that artist is going to be coming around my town, I will be able to see it, and I will be able to be alerted to other artists like that. So tools like that are critical for an artist's career, and I think are looked upon very positively and with a very big degree of curiosity by a company like us. So if you know of any, or if you're building any, or if you're interested in building any, come talk to us.
There are.
Can I just add one thing
please.
on that? So again, totally agree. This is nice. This like atmosphere of collaboration between competitors. But I agree, and I think that the direct to fan relationship is a promise that the internet has always kind of held out for artists. It's challenging even today, because there's always company there to intermediate the relationship between the fan and the artist. In the old days, when you shipped a shiny disc to a store, no idea who bought it. Today, however, Spotify will not tell an artist who is interacting in any kind of personally identifiable way, or a way that creates a direct messaging channel. So all this consumption is happening, still difficult to have a direct relationship with a fan. A lot of artists were very frustrated with Facebook, because they felt that they set up pages, attracting their fans to that platform helped build Facebook, and then one day they wake up and they find out that when they post, they only reach 10% or 12% of their fans. And if they want to reach more, they have to pay Facebook. So it's a never-ending goal and sort of North Star for artists to have a closer relationship, but it's difficult to do. What I will say, and this is the last thing I'll say about this, is that I think what Thiago said is very, very brilliant in terms of a desire on both the fan and artist ends to have a more collaborative relationship. I think one of the mega trends that exists in the world that you have to think about if you're interested in starting a consumer-facing music company right now is that the younger two generations of people on this planet are not passive music consumers, passive media consumers. They want to contribute their own creativity. They want to merge their creativity with the creativity of the artists they like. Their creativity could be creating stickers and drawings on PixArt. It could be doing remixes. It could be lip syncing and dancing or coming up with new dances. But they all want to participate. So a lot of what we're looking at is, how can we feed that desire that's out there?
We were talking about that backstage, how the experience that you once had of buying that CD and listening it for the first time. So far, there's no coming back that experience. But if there is a parallel between the joy of that experience that previous generations had, that these new generations have in music, it is exactly when they are able to create with the music. As you said correctly, they're not passive. They want to create, and that is the piece that gives them, the experience that gives them the joy that music once delivered. And I think we should definitely encourage that.
Two ideas. I want to go first to kind of some of the tech and some of the platforms that are being developed or have been launched to create that relationship between the fan, whether it's through payments or building a relationship. I mean, we have something like Tencent Music, for those of you who don't know, 800 million active users. It's not only about consumption, it's about a fan-driven relationship where you can give social gifts to your fans. Then things that are coming online like Revolution Populi, we talked about Brave, Resonate, all different types of technologies and platforms that create that bond potentially, not all will, but between the creator and the user from a payment perspective, from a relationship building perspective. What are your interactions with those platforms? Are you aware of them? What do you think of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a specific cultural phenomena in certain countries, but we see that a lot, and we hear that from people that we interact with in the innovation ecosystem when they go out and think about what users want. One of the things that we've heard is they want to have a better ability to support the artists that they want to support directly. So. It's a little bit complicated for an artist at a major label level to sort of set up a Patreon account and take a, monthly subscription, but it's not out of the question. And it's, I think it's still a fairly small phenomena, for example, in the United States compared to China and other Asian markets where, this sense of you're just going to spend money to just express something to, an influencer or anyone you care about. Is a really significant multi-billion-dollar business, and companies like Tencent and Douyin in China, which is the Chinese version of TikTok, have built very significant businesses around that, and I would love to see that develop elsewhere. We've got a little bit of that in Twitch. More than a little bit of it. I mean, I think that's the one place you see it in the Western markets is around gaming. But yeah, we're actively figuring out how that can become a bigger part of the business.
It's also because, at least in Asia, there is a more natural infrastructure for that, with mobile payments being so embedded in the culture that it kind of naturally lends itself as a good way to do it. But it's interesting to see that it's a cultural specific or a geographic specific phenomenon, and one that I don't know. We don't know if it's going to expand or if it's going to just remain geographically based. But I'm keen to see it develop and see other models. You were talking about Brave. I personally like Brave. I have Brave on my phone. I think that model is particularly very interesting. I'm not too sure about the getting the money side of things, but as long as they have the money, they're able to pay based on time spent, time consumed, which is, for the music industry, quite interesting if we were to apply, especially because there are genres of music out there that have different lengths, and so when that kicks in at a specific time consumption, the payment of royalties based on time could be also an interesting model. There's another company doing that, which is Coil, from the guys from Ripple, who are trying to build a similar platform for any media consumption based on time spent. It's also possible to game it, right? Because you'll be able to just open up a tab and just leave it open, and you're probably trying to generate royalties out of time that wasn't really spent there. But I think that model is one which is interesting to explore, and I wonder if consumers will ever, on their own behalf, prefer that, and what is the best positioning that a company needs to have to try and educate consumers that actually, you know, the time that you spent reading The Guardian is now paying The Guardian, rather than just you having to see ads, or rather than you just having to click a direct subscription. So I think that's interesting as a model.
So this is all the here and now. I want to talk about the future. I spent the first 3 days of this week at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The first day, attending part of a conference called Interspecies Connectivity. Peter Gabriel was there, and a lot of other people doing research on how we among the species, human and non-humans, will communicate, interact now and in future. The second day was the 50th anniversary celebration of the founding of the internet. It's kind of, for some reason, it doesn't seem to be on anyone's radar. Everyone's talking about landing on the moon, but the first message between MIT and UCLA was sent 50 years ago. And 36 of the founders of the internet, who are all frail but incredibly sharp still, were there talking about how they built it, why they built it, and how it's not what they thought it would be. And there's certainly not as many people on it as they thought would be on it. And then I met with the director of, academic director of music and sciences of the Media Lab itself, and was exposed to some ideas and research that kind of completely blew my mind. So when we talk about the here and now and the troubles and challenges and opportunities, I think, what is our engagement with music and our fans, the creators, everyone around us going to be like in 5, 10, 15 years? We're not going to have any earpods anymore. We're going to have threads flowing through our brains. Are we going to have, I mean, we already now, one of this research shows holograms teaching great apes in remote locations, language skills, pretty fucked up stuff, amazing. So what do you want to see in the future? What would be crazy?
I mean, I have absolutely no idea, and I don't think it's actually, you know, my strength or calling to figure it out. A lot of what we do is try to figure out what the components are and make people aware of them. We actually saw in our internal conference, we saw a great presentation by Paul Rush, is he here? Who was talking about how products are built, and he was talking about us being in an area of combinatorial innovation where like all the tools to build just about anything are there, and so it's more about how you combine those. So a lot of what we're doing with entrepreneurs is going out and finding cool stuff and saying, hey, did you know about this? Example would be a company called Emotive, which came in through our Australian company, that has brought down the cost of EEG headsets very significantly. It used to be to measure brain waves, you had to be in a lab with like wires, and it was like the mad scientist thing. Now it's this kind of cool thing that looks almost like this thing I'm wearing right now that's just got a few sensors, and you can turn lights on and off with it. You can skip songs with it. So there are a tremendous number of tools out there, and our view is if you get enough smart people in a room playing with them, then that'll answer your question.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about brainwave stimulation because that's fascinating. But I think music right now is in a very interesting period. The modes of consumption have somehow had an effect, an impact in the way that now music is being built and being designed. If before the main format was the album, where, again, people bought the album, started on track one, listened to the end, and then turned it around and listened to the second track. Now, music is being created with the purpose of where it's going to end in. And that's predominantly streaming platforms, and that's predominantly playlists in streaming platforms. And so for that, that's kind of shortened the average length of tracks. that has created some specificities around the audio fidelity because of the compression. So I'm actually very excited about brainwave, two-way non-invasive brainwave stimulation, because I wonder what's going to be the impact in music, in the way that music is designed and created, once that mode of consumption actually kicks in. So one of the most fascinating demos that I've had last year was this company called Brain Patch, and similar to what you were talking about, they kind of brought down the costs of the EEG, but they're not focusing on that. They want to focus on being the app store for brain apps, which is fascinating. So I'm like, we don't even have brain in technology, and you're already thinking about the app store. That's fascinating. But the demo that they did was to patch, hence Brain Patch, 2 EEG patches to my head, some little conductive gel, and with that they were able to make me see lights, flashes of light. So this two-way communication, I hope one day will create this world where we, as you said, can skip songs, can control songs, but can also be inputted stimuli into us naturally, again, not invasively, and that we are so accustomed to it, and that it is so natural to us that we can always listen to music. At least that's my dream. I mean, when I wake up, I turn on my playlist and I'll put some music on, and sometimes I fall asleep with music. We ourselves, we did a collaboration with one of the companies that you mentioned, Endel, where we supported the creation of music which is aimed at sleep, aimed at relaxation, aimed at focusing. So if that is naturally flowing through us, as you said, if that is something that we can consume at all times and potentially has beneficial impacts to us on a medical level, on a stress reduction level, on a focusing level, why aren't we doing it? Why shouldn't we do this? Because at least I would love to do that. I would love to listen to music 24/7, sleep and not sleep.
We have time for one question. If there's anyone out there that wants to ask a question, right here in the front, please.
Well, I have like 100 questions. I'm going to try to condense it. Where's the money at in the new digital age for musicians? You say there are many options, many strategic options, many different pathways that a musician can take, but where's the money at? That's my first question, and there's just one quick question. What's your role in your digital age? Like in this current, if the gatekeepers are no longer relevant, where's you guys still around? What's the role of the big labels in this new age?
90 seconds per person.
Well, to answer the second question first, I mean, we still obviously have a lot of relevance, and the reason I say obviously is that there's a lot of artists who could be independent artists that choose to sign with us. In the last, year, we have signed to new contracts Taylor Swift, Elton John, and many others. So there is a level of support that we do uniquely for a particular artist that's trying to achieve a particular thing in their career that's relevant and I think needs to be part of the ecosystem. At least it still has a lot of usefulness and relevancy in the ecosystem. The second question, quick one, is just the same way there's more gates to go in, there's more business models. I mean, there's always been artists that made all their money on touring and no money on record sales. There have been artists that make all their money on merch and not on touring. So it's really about how you construct the business model for your own artist career.
To answer your question, the money comes from consumers and from brands. And our role is actually to make sure that that money exists and to try and defend our artists as much as possible and generate money on their behalf, right? So to be talking to the brands and the new platforms and the new technologies and say, music has value, music is a piece of content that your artists want, so you're generating value for your consumers, so we should benefit a little bit from that. And we are here to support our artists and make money on their behalf for them, right? So I think that's, to very quickly answer your question, I don't know if that's 90 seconds, there is money, it's coming from consumers, and you saw the evolution of non-paying piracy mode to obviously now the streaming world and what's going to come next. And we're tasked to make sure that companies and consumers value music, value our artists' music.
Awesome. Thank you, both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott, for
Good
not showing up.
conversation.